This meeting is now being recorded.
On behalf of the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act CAPTA Work Group, welcome to the webinar today. I am Lenita Hartman from Early Intervention Colorado, out of the Office of Early Childhood. Here with me today is Lorindia Schmidt, out of the Office of Children, Youth, and Families, also at the Colorado Department of Human Services. Together we co-chair the CAPTA Work Group. In addition, we are joined by Heidi McCaslin from the Colorado Department of Education. Heidi is the State Child Find Coordinator in the Exceptional Student Services Unit and is a member of the CAPTA Work Group as well. The CAPTA Work Group is an interdisciplinary team of subject matter experts that came together to assist with the development of the FAQs to help clarify requirements and the misalignment of federal and state requirements for child welfare as it relates to birth through 2-year-olds and children ages 3 through 4. This cross-agency work group includes Eileen Bennett, myself, Heidi McCaslin, Mary Morin, Lorindia Schmidt, Kay Teal, Courtney Holt-Rogers, and Jody Lipfin. This group has spent the past year and a half developing an online interactive FAQ to inform the referral process for developmental screening for children involved with the child welfare system. A wide array of additional stakeholders had a chance to provide feedback during the FAQ vetting process. A huge thank you to everyone who participated in the creation of this resource. The FAQs are intended to provide guidance to communities throughout Colorado in order to fulfill requirements of federal and state statute regarding developmental screening for children under age 5, as well as to provide a platform for further conversation in communities to ensure collaborative screening and services for children under age 5. This webinar will be recorded today for your future reference and will be available at the same URL location as the FAQ in addition to the EI Colorado website. There will be an opportunity for questions at the conclusion of this webinar, so feel free to type your questions in the chat box at the left-hand corner of your screen, as your lines will be muted today during the call. We are also going to ask you to participate in some polls as part of the webinar to inform our training and technical assistance development. Let's go ahead and take our first poll to see who's on the call today. So bear with me a moment while we pull up that poll. And if you can't see the poll on your screen, not to worry. For some folks, your system, it doesn't work as well. It's really just for us to gather some information, so don't despair if you cannot participate in the poll. We still appreciate that you're on the call. So have a lot of folks taking the poll. We'll wait for a few moments for the results to tally. Like we have a lot of folks from early intervention and child welfare, some folks from special education, primary care, welcome. Great. It looks like we have a lot of different representation on the call. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to take a second poll. And this one relates to your role within your organization. And if you're joining as a group, please check all that apply if you're listening as a group today. Still have some answers coming in. We'll wait a few more seconds to finalize chances to provide input. Fantastic. So we have a wide variety of participants, some that work with families, administrators, trainers, others. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our outcomes today. This webinar is intended for those who work within child welfare, early intervention, special education administrative units, including administrators of all three systems, as well as other interested community partners and stakeholders. So we have the right folks on the call. First, we will review requirements for referral for developmental screening for children under the age of 5. And then you will have an opportunity to explore the FAQ as we guide you through how to access and utilize the online FAQ by looking at some of the questions within the document. So we'd like to gain a better sense of your knowledge prior to this presentation today, so we're going to do another quick poll just to get your understanding level of this issue. People, a few more seconds here. Okay, so generally folks are familiar with this topic, and for some it's new, so that's good to know as well. All right. Okay, so before we delve into the online FAQ, we would like to draw your attention to the reason the CAPTA work group decided to create this FAQ document. As you can see on the slide, child abuse and/or neglect is a form of toxic stress that can have a lifelong impact. Developmental screening is a way to determine if a child's physical, social, emotional, cognitive, and adaptive development is typical for his or her age, and if there is a need for further evaluation. Being able to explain to families why screening is beneficial for a child is an important component of our work. Now let's discuss the distinction between federal and state law. Federal law focuses only on children birth through age 2, while Colorado state law includes children ages 3 through 4. When you hear the term CAPTA, it is referring to the federal law that requires a referral from child welfare for developmental screening for children birth through age 2 when child abuse and/or neglect is founded. In addition, CAPTA requires a response by the early intervention system as described in IDEA Part C. In Colorado, the early intervention system includes community-centered boards and the Special Education Administrative Unit Child Find during screening and evaluation. As a result, you can see the importance of understanding roles, responsibilities, procedures, and cross-system coordination so we can all be on the same page. Colorado state law expands the federal CAPTA requirement by also requiring that referrals for developmental screening be made for 3- and 4-year-olds. Unlike CAPTA birth through age 2, where the early intervention system is required to respond, state law does not require one system to respond to referrals for children ages 3 and 4. In Colorado, a referral for developmental screening may be made to any agency that conducts developmental screening, such as primary care physicians, community agencies, and the AU Child Find. This misalignment between federal and state law is one of the primary reasons the CAPTA work group developed this FAQ. Now Heidi is going to walk us through the purpose behind the FAQ.
Thanks, Lenita. So as you can see on the slide, we have 4 purposes identified there to provide guidance to communities, to acknowledge the misalignment that Lenita just spoke about, to clarify the roles and responsibilities of our different partners, as well as to provide a tool for further clarification. We also wanted to acknowledge Colorado's strong value of local control. It allows local agencies to operate with a great deal of local flexibility and decision-making authority within local communities. The variations in available programs and procedures from community to community, however, may present a challenge for local partners when engaging in collaboration around developmental screening. The CAPTA work group identified frequently asked questions and developed answers in order to provide a foundational level of knowledge across education, child welfare, and early intervention sectors, as well as to promote common understanding and messaging. Personnel from each agency and program involved in this work are encouraged to review local policies and procedures, to explore and deepen existing collaborations, and to consider improvements and recommended practices that meet or go beyond minimal requirements. The development of local interagency agreements are required for community-centered boards and encouraged for other agencies involved in this work. We'll discuss the structure of the FAQ tool. It was intentionally developed as an online tool. It's not intended to be printed out as a standalone reference document. The web-based tool allows for more timely updates, immediate access, and ease of use. For example, when a user specifically needs information related to consent for evaluation, he or she may navigate directly to that information. And hyperlinks within the document allow for users to easily navigate within the tool to related concepts, questions, and resources. As you can see, the tool is split into 3 main sections. First, the terms and definitions will help a variety of audiences better understand the context in which we work. These definitions provide consistent use and understanding of the requirements of the systems and community agencies in relation to developmental screening requirements. The frequently asked questions is the next section and addresses commonly asked questions and misunderstandings from the systems involved in this work. And finally, the resources section includes links to literature, other helpful guidance, research, and contact information for further assistance or training. Within the main section of questions, you'll see the questions are grouped by the 5 categories noted on the left there: collaboration, referral, consent, screening, and evaluation. Each question has also been categorized by the age group to which it applies. Some questions apply only to children birth through age 2, some only to children age 3 through 4, while other questions apply to both age groups, birth through age 4. Lastly, the audience groups are indicated for each question so that members of each system can focus, if they wish, on those questions that apply primarily to them. For example, a child welfare caseworker may want to review all questions for which they are designated a primary audience. Early intervention or special education child find personnel may also wish to focus specifically on those questions that most pertain to their role, and so on. Now that you have the background and more information about the tool, Lorendia Schmidt will navigate the online tool and highlight some questions for us.
Thank you, Heidi. While we have everyone on this webinar, we wanted to also highlight a few other frequently asked questions. These are the most frequently asked questions within the FAQ. These questions also highlight some of the features we built into the online tool. The online tool may be found at the web address shown on your screen, which I think we switched to a little earlier, so we'll show that up again in a second. So we're going to start by highlighting a few of the questions. So here this is the main page of the online tool, and we'll scroll down here to where it says frequently asked questions. Here you can see the first page shows all the questions split by the different topics that Heidi just discussed, collaboration, referral, and so on. We're going to start by highlighting question 2.1, what types of referrals come from child welfare for developmental screening? This is a question members of the CAPTA work group frequently receive from community-centered boards and other screening agencies. Here you can see that there are 4 different types of referrals. The first are CAPTA referrals. These are the referrals for children birth through age 2 when there is founded child abuse and/or neglect. These referrals, as we discussed earlier in this webinar, are required at both the federal and state level, and these referrals go to the community-centered boards. The second type of referrals are the 3 to 4 founded referrals. These are for children aged 3 through 4 when there is founded child abuse and/or neglect. These referrals may be made to a number of community agencies, including primary care physicians, the administrative unit child find, or other agencies. The third types of referrals are general child welfare. These are for children birth through age 4 when there is not founded child abuse and/or neglect. Here you can see that within the FAQs, we may actually reference other questions. Here you can see what is the difference between referrals for children aged birth through 2 and 3 through 4, and so on. Finally, we briefly discuss other referrals. These are for children over the age of 5. Next, we want to highlight question 2.2. When child abuse and/or neglect is founded on a child under the age of 5, what is the child welfare caseworker's responsibility regarding developmental screening? We are highlighting this question to show that some questions include both written and graphic answers. In this example, we reiterate that the child welfare caseworker must make a referral for a developmental screening when child abuse and/or neglect is founded. The answer then shows the clear line of referrals for children birth through age 2 to the community-centered boards. The answer also shows the options available for kids ages 3 through 4. This includes primary care physicians and other community agencies. One example of this is in Pueblo County, where the Department of Social Services has an agreement with their local public health organization so that the child welfare caseworkers refer the child to public health for the developmental screening. Then if concerns are found, the public health organization forwards those on to the appropriate agency to continue with evaluation. Please note here on the last one, where we mentioned the administrative unit child find, that it is important to only refer to the AU child find if there is a concern that the child may have a need for special education. In many communities, the Child Welfare Department may believe that the AU child find is the only source for referrals. However, the AU child find does not have a requirement to conduct screening or evaluation unless they suspect that the child has a disability and a need for special education. We encourage the Child Welfare Department or the Administrative Unit Child Find to initiate conversation to determine other appropriate screening agencies. A great example of this is from CAPTA work group member Mary Morin, who I believe is on the webinar with us today. Mary works for Child Find in the San Luis Valley and was aware of a local family resource center who conducts developmental screenings as part of their services. This local nonprofit, La Llave, was happy to receive referrals for developmental screenings and could also offer ongoing and home supports for children and families. Now child welfare caseworkers in the San Luis Valley make their state-required referrals of children aged 3 through 4 for whom there is no suspicion of need for special education and send those referrals to La Llave. Once this resource was identified, Mary worked with me at the State Division of Child Welfare to to add La Llave as an option in Trails. This means that when the child welfare worker uses the child welfare database to make the referral for the developmental screening, La Llave automatically populates as an option. Adding agencies to the Trails database is always an option, and local communities may contact me, Lorendia Schmidt, at any time to complete this task. Next, we'll go on down to the consent questions and start with question 3.1. What is the child welfare caseworker's responsibility after making a referral for a developmental screening? We are highlighting this question because many times the agencies who receive the referral have a difficult time getting in contact with the family. For example, a phone number may no longer be working, or the family does not return the agency's phone calls. In these situations, the agency may want to contact the child welfare caseworker to get updated contact information. Please note that the answer depends on whether or not the family is still involved with child welfare. You can also see that the CAPTA work group answers the question, but also includes talking points for caseworkers when they speak with families to help normalize the need for a referral and encourage completion of the screening. Next, question 3.6. When parental consent is required for screenings and/or evaluation, who is authorized to sign consent? This is another question we chose to highlight because it is one of the most frequently asked questions by screening entities, such as community-centered boards and the AU Child Find. It is also a complicated answer, and so we have included both text and a flow chart. The flow chart starts with the first question that must be asked. Have parental rights been terminated by the courts? If the answer is no, then you can see in the flow chart that it is important to make significant attempts to obtain consent from the parents. If the parents decline consent, then the process ends and the referral source can be notified. If the parents do provide consent, then you can move forward with completing screening and/or evaluation activities. However, if the parents cannot be located or are unresponsive, then other individuals may be able to provide consent for screening and/or evaluation. You can see on the flow chart that these are the same individuals who may provide consent if the parent's rights have been terminated by the court. Finally, at the bottom of the flow chart, we list the individuals who are never able to sign consent. Next, we'll move down to the screening section of questions and start with question 4.3. What happens when a family chooses not to consent or engage in screening and/or evaluation when a referral has been made from child welfare? The challenge here is that developmental screening and evaluations are voluntary, and parents have the right to decline consent. In this answer, we help explain why a parent may not provide consent and what child welfare caseworkers and screening and evaluation entities can do to help engage parents. Next, question 4.4. What is important to keep in mind when screening and/or evaluating children who have experienced child abuse and/or neglect? In this answer, we cover some of the research related to the intersection between child abuse and/or neglect and developmental delays. Then, we narrow the focus to social and emotional development because it is well documented that social and emotional development is the domain most affected by child abuse and/or neglect. This may include attachment issues, difficulty developing social relationships with peers, post-traumatic stress disorder, and antisocial behaviors. Those performing developmental screening may naturally find it easier to observe and document delays in cognitive, language, and physical development than with social and emotional development. It is also recommended that developmental screening include, in addition to the use of general screening tools, the use of standardized tools designed specifically to identify social and emotional concerns. One commonly used screening tool, which focuses exclusively on identifying concerns about social and emotional development, is the Social Emotional Ages and Stages questionnaire. Here you can see that we included a link to the Ages and Stages website for more information. The next question we'll highlight is question 4.5. What are the parents' rights and responsibilities? Here, as you can see, some answers are very short and sweet. However, we also know that even after reading an answer, you may still have questions. Always feel free to contact the subject matter experts listed in the resources section of the FAQ. Next, we will look at question 4.7. What is the parent's or legal guardian's role in developmental screening and evaluation activities? As you can see, we start by linking to the consent questions. And next we talk about the screening evaluation activities. Here we highlight the importance of including parents as much as possible in the process. Just because child abuse and/or neglect occurs within a family does not mean that the parent should be excluded from any screening and/or evaluation activities. In fact, parents are experts on their children's lives, and their knowledge is vital for screening and/or evaluation. In addition, the majority of children involved with child welfare either remain in their parents' home or return home to their parents' care. By involving parents in screening and/or evaluation, as well as early childhood services, we ensure that parents have the tools to continue to support their child's development even after child welfare is no longer involved with the family. Okay, Lanita's going to guide us back to our slideshow here. Okay, Lanita has brought back up our PowerPoint presentation. Here you can see the website to get to the online document, colorado.gov/cw-dev screen. Okay. Thank you for letting us highlight these specific FAQs. Next, we'll answer some questions that have come in over chat, but it looks like we haven't gotten any. So if you have some questions, go ahead and start putting those into the chat box. But first, we're going to ask a couple final polling questions. The first polling question we want to ask here is what you think would be helpful next steps in your community. Please check all that apply.
Folks, a few more seconds to answer the poll.
And the next question is, what technical assistance do you believe would be helpful? And again, you can indicate more than one if that would be helpful. Okay. Thank you to all who completed the poll. It looks like a few themes, quite a few said that cross-sector training or help problem-solving specific issues and helping to engage all partners would be helpful. Okay, let's go ahead and send us any questions that you have. Yeah, Cherie, it sounds like you requested us to review one of the questions again, but I wasn't totally sure which question you were referring to. Can you say a little more in the chat bar about which question? Oh, Mary says, Cherie, did you mean who can never consign consent? Okay, yes. We will go back there. 1 second as we screen share again.
And while we're screen sharing, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. The chat box was full previously, and so if you don't see your question posted, we didn't receive it.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
Okay. So who can sign consent? Question 3.6, the flow chart lists, and down here, the following individuals are never able to sign consent. That includes the child welfare caseworker, the service coordinator, the guardian ad litem, unless the court appointed them as the educational surrogate, early intervention or education providers, or parents whose parental rights have been terminated by the court. Yeah, and that question is question number 3, if you want to look at it more later. It's question number 3.6. Okay, we had another question come in from Lori who asked, is there a process in place to refer cases that are not founded, yet the children are experiencing chronic toxic stress? So yes, the question that we can look at for this one is up here, question number 2.3. When child abuse and neglect is not founded on a child under the age of 5, what is the child welfare caseworker's responsibility regarding developmental screening? So let's look at that one. Here you can see we have text along with the flow chart, so I will go to that. And if you remember, this one is very similar to the other one we saw. And so everything is pretty much set up the same. The difference here is that this piece about obtaining release of information, that's talking to the parents and making sure they're okay with sending the referral to the appropriate agency. But again, the birth through age 2 can still go to the community center boards, while the ages 3 through 4 can go to, you may ask the family if the child has recently completed a developmental screen. You may have locally identified screening entities, such as the example of Mary Morin from the San Luis Valley. And then also, again, you can still refer to AU Child Find when there's an educational concern. Yeah.
So this is Lenita. I would like to just add for children birth through age 2. So if it is a case that is not founded, prior to referring to the community-centered board, you would want to have a concern of some kind. So if the concern is toxic stress and you believe that that is impacting the child's development, you can still go ahead and make a referral to early intervention. We're looking at your questions.
So Jane, this is Heidi. Jane Hackdebrew in Fort Collins has asked a question about the key risk factor for of having been involved in abuse or neglect and how that relates to Colorado preschool program. There were several questions, Jane, that we referenced this idea that having been a victim of child abuse or neglect is an eligible risk factor for participation in the Colorado preschool program. Those questions you'll find, let's just go back to the list of questions and we'll point out a few that you'll find this information under. So I believe if we go to 5.4, that's going to be one place where there's a link to Colorado preschool program information. You'll see in the middle of the screen here, we answer the question about child find and preschool special education, but then we also make the point that children who are not suspected to need special education, but who have past or presently experienced child abuse or neglect, or who are in foster care may be considered by local school districts for state-funded preschool from the Colorado preschool program. And when you click on this link here for CPP, it takes you to the state webpage, which focuses specifically on this particular risk factor for the CPP program. Thank you for your question, Jane. Jane Larson is asking if we cannot connect with the bio parent, can we still send out an ASQ to the foster parent?
So Jean has a question, it looks like, that says, if we cannot connect with the bio parent, can we still send out an ASQ to the foster parent? So this question is answered in the flow chart about who can sign consent. So who is authorized to sign consent. And here you can see, again, the option if the parents cannot be located or are unresponsive, then you may move on with signing consents to these folks, which includes legal guardian who has been appointed through the court, an educational surrogate as assigned by the court or determined by the CCB, or a person with whom the child is living, and this may include a foster parent or kinship caregiver. So thank you for asking that. That's a question we hear quite often, and it's very good.
Okay, we're looking at more questions.
So Sherry asked again about the CPP question. I've just redirected her to the FAQ to drill down into that question a little bit further.
Do we need to clear the chat or is there room?
And as a point, you know, I think it's a really helpful point that you brought up about the Colorado preschool program. And that was one of the main reasons why we decided to do this as a web-based tool, because if we find that that question continues to come up and it seems we don't have enough information about it in the tool, it's much easier to update than a printed resource. So I would say, you know, please feel free to check back on the resources page at any time to see if anything's been added and any updates. So Bridget asks, does the system differentiate between screening and evaluation? And maybe I'll let Lanita respond to that, or Heidi.
Well, in my first thought, Bridget, this is Heidi, is that we do have a question where we clarify that while the referral is being made for developmental screening, many of our local programs are choosing to evaluate children that are referred for special education or early intervention rather than have a screening and then move on to evaluation. For those of you working in our early intervention and education systems, you know that sometimes those decisions are made because of the difficulty in meeting the timeline for when the evaluation must be completed. So we do have several questions where we talk about the differences between screening and evaluation and the fact that while the referral is being made for screening, sometimes the system's response is to offer an evaluation for families. We can identify those specific questions for you.
It looks like there's sort of some conversation. Mary, thanks for chiming in about contacting back to the child welfare worker to see if they have a better number. Sarah Johnson said, regarding Jean's question, the flow chart says may be able. So does that mean there are situations in which they may not be able to be a substitute?
So we understand that gaining consent and determining who meets the definition of parent can be really confusing and complex. And so it's hard to answer that in a global way. The best thing to do is if you have a specific situation and you work your way through the FAQ and the flow chart and you're still not certain who can sign consent, you can contact one of the subject matter experts, so either myself, Lorindia, or Heidi, depending on the circumstances, to help you walk through the situation.
And Bridget, this is Heidi again. Question 2.7 might be one that helps clarify that difference between the referral for screening and the system's response in some cases for evaluation.
So then Rhonda is asking about the duration of time that needs to be spent before you can make the determination that the family is not responsive to a request for permission to evaluate. And within early intervention, most community-centered boards have policies and procedures regarding that. And if you don't, I encourage you to create some. The general rule of thumb is that you are making multiple attempts, multiple reasonable attempts in multiple fashions. So you might try to contact them by phone. You might send them a letter. If you do visits in your community, you may stop by the house of the last known address. That would be considered reasonable attempts.
Do we have any other questions from folks on the webinar today?
And we are really excited about this document and this online resource. And we really encourage you to get on there, explore it, and have conversations amongst each other and get clarification within your communities about your understanding. And if you have further questions or suggestions, if there are things that we are missing, we would love to add those as necessary. So please let us know if you think there are things missing from the FAQ. We have one more poll that we would like to take today, so we're going to put that up. Bear with us a moment. We just want a sense of if you found this webinar helpful today and if you feel like it increased your understanding of the topic. We do have a few more minutes. We have about 15 more minutes. So if you have a burning question related to the FAQ or developmental screening referrals from child welfare, we are happy to answer those. Okay, so most folks, this is very helpful in terms of increasing your understanding, so we're glad to hear that. Okay, so we do have another question.
So Cherie is asking about the Colorado preschool program and whether all children in out-of-home care considered at risk should apply for CPP. I would encourage local systems to talk with their Colorado preschool program coordinator so that they can learn more about the access to Colorado preschool program slots. Each district that has slots has a process for how to award those slots and how to determine eligibility for children based on their local procedures. And so if you're not familiar with your Colorado preschool program contact, You can navigate to that through the web link that was provided to the Colorado Preschool Program page. Your child find coordinator can also put you in touch with the CPP coordinator. Sometimes it's the same person holding both those roles. Thanks for your question.
Okay, so, any other final questions?
Well, we really thank all of you for your participation. If we were unable to answer your question, or if you would like more information, please feel free to contact any of the folks on this final slide. We are more than happy to support the collaboration in your community. Next steps include, we actually have another webinar scheduled on October 30th for folks who did not able to attend today can join us then. And we also, Lanita and Heidi and I, will reach out to communities as needed and as requested to set up training and technical assistance, communication, facilitating conversations within communities. Whatever you all think would be most helpful, please let us know, and we are happy to set those up.
For those of you that are involved in our regional meetings for child find coordinators this month and next month, we do have a dedicated agenda item on this topic, so we'll spend some time together navigating and working on some of these questions, as well as gathering information from you all about what support and help you need to move forward.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us on this webinar today, and we hope that you have a wonderful Monday. Thank you.